Hi, welcome everybody. We called this How Cumulocity IoT Aligns with Your Strategy. Specifically, this is around authentication and authorization. But before we start, I want to share a short video with you all, which will actually give you some insight into why actually having this talk here in Budapest is really, really very cool. Can you run the video? Thanks.
In the 1990s, society began to face a revolution in communication technology. Suddenly, life was easier. Information was available at the touch of a button. Shops and banks could be accessed via a screen. Work and family life became easier and smarter. But behind the scenes stalked a shadow. Cybercriminals preparing to take advantage of the global information society. Criminals who steal personal data of millions of individuals, who defraud people on a massive scale, who cause damage worth trillions of euros to companies and shut down hospitals or critical infrastructure in ransomware attacks, who use the internet to sexually exploit children, to bully people or spread hate, who even hit at the core of democracy by interfering in elections. What's more, law enforcement authorities now have to deal with computer-based evidence in all types of crimes. And crime online knows no borders. Offenders, victims, computers and evidence are often spread over multiple countries. The Council of Europe, the European body that brings together countries to protect human rights, uphold democracy and ensure fairness and justice, saw the scope of the challenge and responded. Bringing together the best expertise from law enforcement, private tech companies and public bodies the 1990s had to offer, it built the world's first binding treaty to tackle cybercrime. Launched in 2001 in Budapest, the Convention on Cybercrime prompted governments to provide a list of offences against and by means of computers in their criminal law. It gave criminal justice authorities the tools to investigate and to collect electronic evidence, but with the necessary safeguards to prevent misuse of such powers. It set up a system for effective international cooperation that would work 24/7 to pursue cybercriminals across borders. It spread its methods worldwide, making criminal justice systems everywhere strong and fitter in the face of cybercrime and electronic evidence. And as technology in crime evolved over time, so did the treaty, with new protocols designed to tackle racism and xenophobia and to provide more efficient tools for cooperation across borders. Today, the Cybercrime Convention remains the world's primary treaty to protect individuals against crime online, guaranteeing our human rights, safeguarding democracies, and ensuring justice and fairness in cyberspace.
Cool, huh? I thought so. So then, what are we going to talk about today? Security is just like a huge subject, right? We could be here all week, and we still wouldn't have scratched the surface. So what Saren and I decided to do was actually just focus in on two aspects. That's single sign-on and certificate-based authentication, because we believe that A, they're really super important, and B, we've been doing quite a lot of work in single sign-on recently, and we plan to do a lot of work in the certificate-based authentication area. Before I go any further, can I actually ask who's using single sign-on? Lots of people. Good. Excellent. Well, in that case, what I'll do is I won't spend too much time on this slide. Single sign-on is really super important if you're not using it, because effectively what it means is you've just got one team or one person, depending on the size of your organization, and they can actually apply the mechanisms that you actually want to do to manage your people in just one place. So for instance, the bog standard one that's always difficult, what do you do when somebody leaves your organization? It used to be a case of some poor person had to go around each and every application and log them out and deny them access. With single sign-on, you only have to do that in one place. What we actually want to talk about is what have we done within the single sign-on space in Cumulocity IoT over the past year, 18 months. I'll be honest and say that our integration with single sign-on was not the best, right? It sort of worked, but there were still big holes in it. And one of the big reasons for that is we've got a really neat, granular security mechanism, Cumulocity IoT, based on role-based access control. Now, what RBAC allows our customers to do is to have specific roles for specific jobs, for specific people. For instance, even recently, we've now taken that down to the fragments of a measurement. So you can really only allow people access to the data that they should see. But that really complicated our integration with an external identity access manager. And we fixed that. And Saren will be taking you through all of the things that we've actually done in that area. So here is just a short list of some of the stuff that we've been doing. OpenID Connect was delivered as part of our work to get STIG compliance. We've done a lot of work around the global role configuration, as well as updating to the OFC 9068. Basically, what that means is you can actually use the latest IAMs, but it looks good having the OFC number there. And inventory roles, they can now be assigned to the roles that your single sign-on users use. So we believe this has really, really helped with the single sign-on integration and makes it much more usable. But if you have any further questions or ideas after this presentation, please do catch me or Saren so that we can add that to our backlog. So I'll hand over to Saren, who will take you through the details.
Thank you, Jane. Well, before jumping into the topic, I really wanted to actually speak about something on tokens. Why tokens? Because this is something I have been hearing and a lot of FAQs from all the customers that, they were really, really confused about the tokens that are flowing around the platform. One said, JW tokens has been deprecated. The other said, why? I had been using it recently. And the other one said, you said you are going to introduce it in the future. What is this confusion? Let us clear that confusion today, right? Tokens in Cumulocity. First and foremost thing, there is something called device session tokens. And what are these device session tokens? When your device is connected to the platform using a certificate-based authentication, the MQTT protocol itself has some drawbacks in it because it cannot handle more than a certain amount of load and stuff, right? So to handle that, any MQTT successful connection which is made through a certificate authentication, we have offered, they can actually procure a session token by making a request, MQTT request. And that session token can be used to make the rest of the REST API calls, provided you actually prove your authorization to access it. So that's device session tokens. And the other one I wanted to speak about is JWT login tokens. This is something which is what is deprecated. This was introduced much before we have introduced single sign-on capability into the platform. And why is this deprecated? Because it's the most non-standard way we have actually dealt with tokens indeed. Meaning, there are certain claims, there are certain keys, and all of which we need to upload to the platform. Then making the platform understand that whenever you receive a token with this format, this claims, and this signature, accept that. That's something which you are giving and letting the platform know upfront. But that's the most non-standard format of authentication. There are many pitfalls. I don't want to get into the details about what the pitfalls are, but that's something which is completely non-standardized. And that's being deprecated, but it's still in use. It's not, we haven't removed it yet, but that's still in use. That's just deprecated right now. We're going to remove it soon. And the next one is there are two login modes that are there in the platform. And you all know that the platform actually supports a basic authentication. And the biggest drawback of basic authentication is every request will carry the username and password with it on the wire. And we don't want to do that. That's the primary goal for security, that we need to actually reduce the attack surface as much as possible. And these two login modes, the OAI secure and session tokens, these two use also something called session tokens again. The very first request takes your login credentials. Once your identity is approved, authenticated, then it returns you with a session token again. Right? And that session token can be used in your subsequent request to make further request to the platform. Right? And last but not least is identity and access token. This is a futuristic thing. From an end user point of view, you will still not be able to still not be able to see that in the platform. But yeah, we will speak about this in my subsequent slides as such. Yeah. So what's common across all these tokens? Why is it getting confused? That is because all of these are in one single format, which is JWT, right? So you take device session tokens, JWT login tokens, these OAI or SSO session tokens, or the access and identity tokens. All of these follows one single format, which is JWT. And JWT format looks something like this. So for someone who hasn't seen JWT, but it will have three sections in it. One, which is a header, which speaks about what's the nomenclature, what's the metadata, what kind of algorithm is used, what's the type of the token that you're using and stuff. And you'll have a payload, which is a set of claims. I'll speak about that in a bit. And of course, the last section is the signature. Right? So that's the tokens. So let us not use a plain tokens. I'm using tokens. The tokens have been deprecated. Let us not speak just about tokens. We will add context to the tokens when we are speaking about it, so that it makes your life and our lives more simpler. Right. Now let me jump into the topic as such, which is single sign-on. How does it align with your business? So any organization, any business, probably doesn't deal with one single application, right? So as Jane said, there are multiple applications you need to deal with, and these applications could be coming from different vendors. And I don't want to create, for my organization users, I don't want to go to each and every application, create the users for them, and manage it in multiple different sources. I really want one single source where that single source become a place for onboarding the user, offboarding the user, and also making the auditability very clean. Why is auditability very important in security? Because take a case where you have multiple applications where the user management is happening in multiple different places, right? So a person or an employee who is actually working with your organization for a prolonged period of time might be jumping the departments, might be working in different areas as such. As and when he needs more and more privileges, when he moves to the department, he keeps acquiring permissions. Probably more and more permissions gets added to his list. When you look at it over a period of time, he becomes more powerful user than any other person in his organization, right? That's in security terminology, it's called privilege sweep. Without one's knowledge, he'll become the super user of the company over a period of time. So that point is really, really important when you're actually talking about security, because, that's another reason why we need to have single source of onboarding and offboarding users and maintaining an auditability across what kind of roles he possesses and what should he not. Right? Yeah, that's a bit about how, why SSO is important and how it aligns to your business strategy. And why, the other important reason I would like to say is, you might be working on a regulated environment, and you will have your own password policy. You might have your own roles. You wanted to define your own permissions, and all of it happens at one single source, right? And that when you are actually dealing with single sign-ons, it's going to make your job easier as well. Now, let us come to the other side of it. On Cumulocity also, we are giving you that granular security permissions, right? So we are giving you a role management capability where you have a freedom of creating your own roles with the permission set that we have given you and assigning them to the users as such. Now, how do I map these users that are in your IAM to the users in Cumulocity? Right? So that's exactly what I'm going to speak about. So basically, The first and foremost thing, as you configure the single sign-on in your Cumulocity platform is, you need to actually highlight, the highlighted portion is dynamic access mapping. This helps you map that. You have defined your user and the kind of permissions he wants to have in your IAM that needs to be mapped to a Cumulocity role now. And how do Cumulocity understands that? Let me take you back to this particular piece of JWT token, where the middle section, the payload data, is what is called claims in it. So these claims define, it's customizable as you integrate an Azure AD or an AWS IAM or anything that supports OAuth 2, right? Everything will have a set of claims that you can introduce, which, for example, which role he has. Probably you can define your custom roles on top of what comes as a standard. Once you have defined that, all of these things get visible into your access tokens or identity tokens. Now, coming back to your dynamic access mapping, you see something called a key operator and value. That's a condition that you can define based on the claims that you receive in access token. Right? Once you have defined the condition, then it becomes easier to map a kind of role that you have defined in your platform. Which means, when Cumulocity platform receives a token, it understands how to read your claims, and then looks through the condition that is configured when you have done your SSO configuration. Then, once the condition meets, you should be able to, the kind of roles that you have defined in global roles or the default applications that you wanted to assign to that user, all of it is in one go right now. So that's one important aspect which I wanted to bring you, how you can map your roles that are in your IAM to the roles that you have defined in your Cumulocity. The other new thing that we have introduced is inventory roles, which Jane just mentioned. And these inventory roles, majorly this is used for device groups, and which was a missing piece in this dynamic access mapping so far, but that's something which we have introduced with 10.17 and onwards. So, and that also depends on the same conditions, which comes with access claims as such. And the last thing, the three little options that you see in the bottom is very important in the way you actually configure your SSO. Let me give you, instead of walking you through these options, let me give you an insight about why these options are introduced. Take a case where you have defined your SSO configuration, right? Some conditions are met. SSO user logs in. He was assigned with some roles. Now, the user comes, you as a tenant administrator, he reaches to you and he asks for more roles than what he is actually assigned through that condition. He doesn't have an admin role, for example, and he wants an admin role for a certain period of time, or probably he wants that admin role forever, right? So these options will help you achieve that condition, meaning you can actually, only two options. I wanted to make him an admin permanently, or I wanted to make him admin only during that session pertains as such. Meaning, when the request is come, I'm going to assign him an admin privilege, but that is going to only pertain till the session lasts. Once he relogs in, that admin permission will go off, and this condition gets executed, and whatever roles that he assigns through conditions will be given back again. That's reset. The other option is like, you are going to give it permanently and stuff. And the third option is, you don't allow it, or you want to only fiddle between the roles that are assigned through the condition. So take a wise decisions, because security, in my opinion, is while the platform offers you so many features, it's important for you to actually make right use of it, and it's a shared responsibility as such. So how you align your business needs with Cumulocity is when you rightly understand the features that are offered in the SSO integration space as such. Okay, so now let me move on to what's more we have. So this is one aspect of it. The other aspect I wanted to speak about is how SSO integrations simplify your app integrations. Like I said, when you look at an organization, there are multiple applications that want to speak to each other to make your organization work to its business needs indeed. So when take a case where probably you have applications and you have Cumulocity also part of it, and for example, a Power BI application which wants to speak to your Cumulocity APIs as such. And these Power BI applications or the third-party applications doesn't need to re-authenticate to Cumulocity when both of these applications are integrated to a common endpoint, which is your external IAM, right? So I'm assuming that there are applications and the Cumulocity, all of it using the same single IAM, which wants to communicate to each other. And how does Cumulocity help here is, so take a case where, there are applications and your third-party application is actually integrated to your authorization server. So this is how the integration happens. So when you actually successfully integrate, the first request goes from application to your authorization server is the request for an auth code. And once you have an auth code, you make a request for an access token. And once you have that access token, this access token is enough for you to make any Cumulocity API request. And how does Cumulocity understand this access point? Because Cumulocity also has integrated its SSO. So now we have enhanced the capability of our SSO integration, where Cumulocity has the capability to validate the token when it is receiving a request from an external application. So it's not just the username and password that you are going to that it is able to actually prove or authenticate. It can also read the access tokens, which is procured completely by an external means. It has a capability to go to authorization server, validate it, and once it is valid, it actually returns with whatever the resource that you have requested for. And what is it doing? And by all these things that we have enhanced in our SSO space, what are we doing? We are actually simplifying the app integration. Yeah. Then comes, yes, so far we have spoken about user identity governance and how it aligns with your business policies and strategies. But we are talking about IoT platform, right? So in IoT platform, we also have device identity governance. And one of the one way of identifying and governing the devices is through certificates. And how do certificates, how are the certificates procured? So many of you know, we have this certificate-based authentication, which is only limited to MQTT connections now. And devices, whoever wants to communicate, organizations who wants their devices to communicate to the platform using certificate authentication, they go to an external CA, get their devices signed, and what you do is upload your certificate. Basically, there is a PKI infrastructure which is lying behind. So you have an end entity certificate. Probably there can, your public CA might be having an issuing CA or signing CA. So you need to go to him, request for signature, and probably get your certificate signed. As I'm speaking, so you understand the complexity behind it, right? So there is a lot of, this by itself is a high complex area. Not many people are adopting to this solution, but indeed, in the next slides, I'm actually going to walk you through how simple it is indeed, right? So surely it is not a barrier, but we need to actually understand how certificate authentication works in the context of Cumulocity. So just bear with me when I explain you this. Then I will talk to you about the kind of improvements we brought in this area. Okay. So there's an IoT device. Before speaking about certificate authentication and how do you procure certificates, you generate a key pair, which is a public and private key pair. Take your public key to your issuing CA, get it signed, and package it into something called device certificate. Now, you put that into something called key store, which holds both the public key and private key indeed. The next thing is you need something called trust store for you to actually enable mutual TLS. And what should this trust store contain? This trust store should contain the server's public certificate, whatever actually, to whichever platform, whichever server you want to connect to. In our case, it's Cumulocity, right? So Cumulocity's public certificate gets into trust store and gets packaged into something in there. And the last thing that you need to do is once you have the issuing CA, whoever has signed all your devices, take that issuing CA's public certificate and upload it to Cumulocity platform. Job done. You are onboarded now. So Cumulocity will now be able to understand when device produces its certificate, if it is signed by an issuing CA which is uploaded to him, then he is going to authenticate. You are now onboarded as such. So that's as simple as that. So all you need is to actually generate a packaged device key store, which is going to hold the private key and public key of the devices. And the second thing is you need to have a trusted store, which is going to hold the server's public key in it. And the third thing is the trusted certificate, which is, the issuing CA's public key needs to be uploaded to the platform and done. You are now onboarded onto the platform. Having said this, there are some limitations in this approach that is what we are going to talk about. So like I said, platform offers you to upload certificates, and these are the certificates, like in the top list that you see, these are the trusted certificates, Global Sign CA and Amazon. In this case, any device which is signed by these two trusted certificates or CAs can be authenticated to the platform successfully. And the bottom, so there is an auto registration feature. It just not authenticates, it registers for you and everything. Once it is successfully registered, it also creates something called device credentials in the background, and you have that list in place. Now, what's the limitation here? Take a case where your trusted CA himself is compromised. You have an option to disable him directly. You can go there and just probably disable, and that's it. You're now disconnecting the devices from the platform. Then they will no more be able to speak to the platform, whoever is signed by that CA. Or the device itself is compromised, probably you can go and delete the device. Now, what's not there is, take a case where the certificate is compromised, which is used to communicate to the platform. We don't have a capability right now to actually tell the platform that these devices coming with these revoked certificates should not be allowed. So we don't have that capability right now. So that's the missing gap which we are trying to fill indeed. Right? So device certificate authentication certificate, so the support for CRL and OSCP is what we are introducing as part of this. Now, what is CRL and OSCP? Bear with me. We wanted to generalize this solution to satisfy a lot of customers that we have. There are customers I was speaking to here who are maintaining their own PKIs, who can maintain what is revoked, what is not revoked. And there are also customers who are using the self-signed CAs who are not that capable of managing managing all their revoked certificates. So we need to support these two in the same time, right? Which is why we brought in something called online revocation and offline revocation. So customers who are having their own PKI systems and their CAs managing their compromised certificates, they can choose an online revocation. And customers who are using their self-signed certificates or issuing CAs, they can actually go for offline certificate revocation. Right? I surely don't want to actually walk you through this, but I wanted to actually want you to understand that there is something that is coming up which looks like this, online revocation. You just have to enable that option, and that takes care of things. And if you don't have your CAs maintaining your revoked certificates, we can go with offline revocation. And that's something which is not there. This is a mock-up of our UI that we are going to come up with. So in the device management portion, you will see something on top of the place where you upload the trusted certificate. On top of what you can do, you can also see something called CRL settings, where you can go define your serial numbers which you plan to revoke, or which you don't want to trust. So we have disabling at 3 levels now. You can, when the trust is lost between the device or device vendors and the platform, you have 3 options. One, you can go disable at the trusted certificate, trust anchor level. You can disable the trust anchors, which you are planning to support, or you can disable the devices. The third option is something which is here, and you can actually disable. You can come up with the revoked set of certificates. And you have, there is another thing, probably, if you have many devices in place which we wanted to revoke, probably you can upload. Just to simplify the usability, we brought in a concept of, uploading the revoked certificates in one single file as such. Okay, I think I'll stop here, and probably I'll let Jane to give a sneak peek of what is coming in future indeed. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Sohan. So I'm sure you'll agree that we've made some real advances in the single sign-on, and we actually want to do the same thing for certificate-based authentication as well. So we're actually at the moment looking at how do we actually improve that certificate authentication. So if anybody here has got specific requests, please do come and see me. At the moment, we're toying up, do we actually put something in the product and actually have something similar to the messaging service and have a security service that actually will do the certificate management for Cumulocity. And we also want to start allowing certificate-based authentication for the REST interface as well. We've had some requests for multiple external identity access managers, so if anybody's got any views on that. And also, we're going to be moving to a single scalable authentication component. So what we can actually start doing is scaling the authentication much more easily. So that's a sneak preview as to what we're actually looking at the moment. Just to be very clear, this is vaporware at its finest point. It's barely even got anything written down yet. We've got some documents around some of this stuff, but that's about it. So now's your chance to leap in, come chat, and get your ideas put in place. Thank you all very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Any questions? We have about 5 minutes for questions.
The certificate authentication for the REST APIs here, is that meant for device? Sorry. REST APIs or also for... no, it's better. For all APIs, so that I can also do service-to-service communication with certificate authentication?
At the moment, it's generic, so we're looking at all REST APIs.
Thank you.
Probably more of a comment.
Right.
Fantastic features. Absolutely fantastic. So I think also a question regarding the external application connection and supporting different kind of authorization flows. Would that mean it would be possible to support device authentication flows? For example, if someone has a CLI tool, to use SSO authentication, currently that's not possible because you always need a redirection URL. And you get back and go, oh, that's not a Cumulocity URL, so you can't fake it. Do a local host to support this kind of automation level side of getting device authentication flow supported.
Well, if I understand you right, so you're expecting devices to actually make use of, if you're managing your device users in SSO, I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say devices, I would say a automated external application. So not really devices, more of a client, let's say.
Yes, it should be manageable. I mean, since I know the technical details inside, so if you have your SSO integrated, or if you have your trusted certificates like it is planned, it doesn't matter where you are going to procure the tokens from. And yeah, you should be able to use it on Cumulocity, indeed.
Yeah, okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Just throwing a comment out there as well. I right now need to, for my enterprise integration stack, use a local user to pull data in. So if we can use a certificate to do that, that would really be a big bonus for us. That's one less local user I need to manage. And it's a lot more secure with that certificate, putting data in and pulling data out of the platform.
Fingers crossed, we are going to come up with something like that only.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.